Welcome to Table Talk here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. Over 12 years strong, we got a great discussion coming your way. It is a post-mortem from not only the NHL Draft, but this Flyers draft and what Danny Briere and company did this past week and weekend. There are new talent coming to the Philadelphia Flyers in the future. And joining us, we absolutely love having her on the show from BroadStreetHockey.com. She runs the ship over there. She's been a good friend here at the podcast for so many years, jumping on Ms. Kelly Hinkle. How you doing, Kelly?
Good. I realize you've been on for 12 years. That's sick.
For freaking 12 years. Yeah, we celebrated
awesome.
in April. So I can't believe the guys are still doing this with me too. I honestly, Len can't commit to anything in life, and the fact that he's still been doing it for over 12 years, it's astonishing to me. But anyway, it's great to see you. And I got to tell you too, like before we really dive into the draft, I thought it was fantastic. I was listening to the PHLY podcast as I usually do. You, Charlie O'Connor, and Bill Matz, you actually were talking to Rick Tocchet after the draft, talking about the draft process, what it was like, as they were evaluating players. And you guys had a great interview. I would really, really suggest that folks listen to that PHLY Flyers podcast with the three of you, or I should say the four of you, including Rick Tocchet. How was the conversation? Like, how was that, talking to the new Flyers head coach? He hasn't done anything yet at this point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of optimism. How was it?
It was really neat, actually. And it was kind of unexpected. We were actually supposed to talk to Dan Hilferty.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah. And then last minute, they were like, never mind, you're getting Tocchet. And we were like, neat. Okay.
Fine by you guys. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's cool to meet him. I'm a big vibes person. And,
I know you are.
to kind of get the vibe of what kind of guy he is. I know that people can be inauthentic, but I do kind of think it's difficult to kind of completely shield who you are as a person when you're talking to a group of strangers for 20 minutes. And I got the sense that he is, so no secret, it's not who I would have chosen for the Flyers head coaching position.
Right.
But, the second that they made the decision, I'm behind it. I want the Flyers to succeed. So, number one Rick Tocchet fan here. But a lot of his answers, I think, were a little bit more forward thinking than I think you would imagine.
Yes.
A little bit more nuanced. Like, he seems like a very thoughtful guy. He seems to have a lot of ideas about what he's going to do with this roster and how he's going to maximize the talent of some of the guys that last year didn't take the steps forward that we were hoping for, like Tyson Forster, Owen Tippett. We asked about them specifically, and it seems like he has put together a team of assistant coaches that he has a lot of faith in, and also that it kind of seems like he thinks they're smarter than him, which I feel like as a leader, like that's like a really good way to build a team, is to get a bunch of people that you think are smarter than you.
Well, I don't know if it was your question, right? I don't know if I forget if it was your question or Charlie's question when he was at right at the start of the interview, was asked about Danny Briere and just because they had known each other and do have somewhat of a past together. And he was trying to describe Danny Briere in that way where he's like, you know what? And even himself as a coach, he's like, you want to put people around you that know more than you, and that are better than you at certain things, and I thought it was really honest of him saying that. That gave me a lot of hope for the future, that he's a real guy, that he's going to, at the end of the day, be relatable to these players.
Yeah. And I think that the worst thing you can be as a leader is the type of person that thinks you're the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
And I do think that a lot of NHL head coaches fall into that trap, particularly ones that have been around for a long time. I mean, a lot of people generally fall into that trap whenever they get, a little bit of power, a little bit of authority. They just start to assume that they know best and they're the smartest guy in the room and every decision they make is infallible. And I really got the sense that Rick Tocchet is absolutely not that kind of guy. And John Tortorella, while he was a nice guy, genuinely seemed like a nice man, I do think that is particularly in his role as an NHL head coach. I kind of got the vibe that he thought that he was the smartest guy in the room, and
Oh, he
that
was putting his heels in and he wasn't going anywhere.
every decision that he made was the right one. His way
Right.
was the only way to do it properly. And I think, I don't know, I found it a bit refreshing to come away from that chat with him thinking like, okay, this guy probably has some interesting ideas, and not only that, he's going to be willing to listen to the people around him and, maybe implement some stuff that he didn't implement in Vancouver or
Yeah.
in Arizona, or as his time as an assistant coach in Pittsburgh or whatever. Like it made me feel better about the hire than I did initially.
Yeah. Yeah, it made me as well. Honestly, it's like
Hmm.
I want this season to get here sooner rather than later just to see
I
what type
know,
of
right?
coach he's really going to be. But look, as we are reflecting on this NHL draft, this Flyers draft here, Kelly, the last time that we talked was back in I think like mid-May, and I had asked you at that point what your hope was for the Flyers at the number 6 overall pick. And let's just say, you had mentioned, and then I think the consensus was leading up to the draft that we hoped they would be able to pick a guy like James Higgins. And
Hmm.
he was there at number 6, and they
Was.
passed on him for Porter Martone. So look, we've heard what Danny Briere has had to say about Martone, the decision why. We all know that. I'm wondering, as a fan and as somebody who covers this team as well, what are your thoughts about the pick, and what kind of player Porter Martone may be for this team as part of this rebuild down the road?
So I'm pretty excited about it, actually. I think that it seemed like heading into the draft, um, the general consensus seemed to be that Martone probably wouldn't be there
Yeah.
at 6. I think that like most of the experts assumed that he was going to be taken before 6. And then kind of like in the week leading up to the draft, Anton Frondell seemed to like rocket up to that 3rd spot pretty quickly. Obviously, you had the Brady Martin thing happen.
Yep.
He was taken before the Flyers could get to him. Um, so I think that like I, I think heading into the draft, I think at least in my mind, based on like conversations I had with Charlie, reading mocks and things that the experts had to say, it seemed to me like the best case scenario for the Flyers was that they were going to have the choice of one of like O'Brien, uh, Porter Martone, or not Porter Martone, sorry, James Higgins, and then like maybe Brady Martin. Like
Yeah.
those were going to be the ones that they were picking from. And in that situation, I really wanted them to take Higgins because he was obviously the one out of those three that was going to be the best.
And we were looking at
Um,
the center position. Honestly,
and
we
you
were
need
looking at
and
the
you
center
need
position.
centers, right?
Yeah.
There's no denying that. But it seems like Martone falling to them at 6 was a little bit of kismet because he's not okay. He's a winger, yes, but he also seems to be one of the best playmakers and scorers in the draft. He seems to be one of the guys that's closest to NHL ready
Yeah.
in this draft, which is cool. And we've been saying all along that, like, yeah, the Flyers have positional needs, but they also just need talent. And I think that the wager is that Porter Martone is a more of a sure bet on talent, high end talent, than James Higgins is. And then also on top of that, um, the size thing. It was very clear if you look at this draft, very clear that the Flyers were like, we got to get bigger.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're gonna get
And
into that for sure. Yeah.
yeah, Porter Martone's a big boy.
Yeah.
James Higgins is not, and I wonder if trading for Trevor Zegras the week before might have factored into that. Like, okay, now we have Zegras, he's kind of a small center. Now we have Luchenko, he's kind of a small center. Like
Yeah.
they were probably thinking, like, do we want to add a third small center? Like, even though he's definitely going to be good, or do we want to take this big wing who's also really, really good? Like it would be one thing if you looked at Higgins and Martone and there was a real talent disparity between them, but there's not. Like Martone is just as good or arguably better of a player,
Right.
you know, as a whole than Higgins. So the Flyers got a really good one, and I think it's exciting. I believe he was a Flyers fan when he was a kid,
Yes,
which is kind of neat. Like
that is cool.
that's always fun for me.
Yeah.
He's not from here, but he was a Flyers fan. That's
Talking
fun.
about coming up to a game and stuff. That was
Yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, it's really neat. I kind of love when that kind of stuff happens. So I think it was a really good pick by Briere and his team. I think it's a kid that we're going to be really excited about once we start seeing him on the ice.
Yeah.
And he seems, over the years, last couple, we've had some, I think, anxiety about people wanting to play here. I
Right.
think he really wants to play here. So, that's also really good.
I think that was one of the best parts of the draft in terms of the whole format, because the NHL draft format this year, holy cow, was really, really rough. I was
He-
Oh, it was so rough to get through. It really was. And I'm like, I'm watching it on vacation, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably should be with my family here. Kidding, folks. I was with my family, but it was rough. But that was like the best. That story about how he and his family came up to see a Flyers game. Been a Flyers fan for his entire life. It was great.
Had a
So
Claude Giroux poster on his wall. Come on.
exactly,
He's one
exactly.
of us. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, now let's get into their second first round pick, Jack Nesbitt. I had this weird feeling that Nesbitt was going to be drafted by them, to be honest with you. I thought it was going to be one of their later two picks. But then they moved up. They packaged those latter first round picks, giving them to the Penguins, which I thought was interesting. Moved up to, did they move up to number 11 or 12? I'm forgetting.
12.
It was 12.
12.
Yeah, number
Mhm.
12 overall. And has been noted by our good friend Charlie O'Connor and other NHL reporters and analysts. There's definitely some big upside with Nesbitt, but his skating needs to improve. It's probably the weakest aspect of his game. That's what everybody's been talking about since he was picked by Danny Briere and company. So, what are your thoughts on how Jack Nesbitt coming to the Flyers in the first round, how that actually played out, and your thoughts about the kind of player he's going to be potentially for this team down the road?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting one. So we were at our draft party, the Broad Street Hockey
Yep.
slash PHLY draft party. We had a pretty sizable crowd. And when the trade went down, like people were excited. Like
Yeah.
people were pretty amped.
So the energy
Particularly
level got up to here. The energy level
way
got up
up.
to here. Yes.
Um, Especially I think because of two players in particular that were still on the board at that time, Kashan Aitchison and Jack Smith, both
Yeah.
defensemen, both kind of predicted to be taken kind of in that, 10 to 14 range.
Yep.
And I think people were kind of excited about the prospect of getting one of those guys because, the Flyers could use help on defense too. Um, and then they take Nesbitt and kind of like the air kind of came
Go up
out of
from
the
here,
balloon.
and then
Yeah.
it comes down to
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, right
Because
here.
and here's and for me too because it kind of made me think back to the Jet pick, because that was a guy that was not on anyone's radar
Right.
for the Flyers at 13 the night of the draft. um it's not what anyone expected, and when it happened, there was kind of just this like palpable like, well, what the hell are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you making this crazy reach? And and to be fair, Jet was kind of a pretty substantial reach. I think consensus wise, like that was definitely a reach. However, in hindsight, like obviously we don't know for sure yet, but right now it seems like Jet Luchenko is going to be a pretty effective NHL hockey player, and I don't feel bad about that pick at all at this point. And I would
Right.
be surprised if other people still felt bad about it.
Yeah.
So that said, I think that for most people, like casual fans, casual draft watchers, the people who just look at rankings and mocks and stuff like that, they saw that pick and they were like, this is not a guy that I had in my brain. Like, this is not a guy that I thought we were going to take at 12. Like, what are we doing? This is crazy. And honestly, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? This is crazy. Like, why are we not taking Aitchison? Like that, what's happening? But then, in the days following, I did some reading, and it seems like as far as like, like public draft people, like, the Buttons, the Pronmans, like the Wheelers, like those kinds of guys that put out these mocks over and over and over again, the ones that we all consume most. Um, it did seem like you said that Nesbitt was going to be kind of a late first round guy.
Yeah.
But when you kind of dug in more to like Bob McKenzie's ranking, which is more based on what teams will actually do, it seems like Nesbitt was definitely ranked higher among league people. You know, the guys making the picks.
Yeah.
He was ranked higher amongst those people than he was in the private rank or the public rankings. Like for example, it's Barry Trotz said that like they were trying to trade up into that range, and then the guy that they wanted to get was taken, and so they stopped trying. And it kind of is like assumed at this point that they were going to take Nesbitt
Yeah.
if they were able to get into that range. So I don't think it was as much of a reach as people felt like it was night of. That said, it's definitely not a sure thing. But his biggest problem seems to be skating, and the Flyers have kind of proven that they can fix that. Like to a degree. Like Tyson Forster was a terrible skater when they got him.
Right.
They've fixed that pretty well.
Yes.
They seem to be confident in their ability as an organization to take a bad skater and make him into one that's at least good enough to maximize his talent in the NHL. So I think there's that part of it. And then there's also like the obvious fact, like you said at the beginning of this, the Flyers need centers. They went into this draft, I think we all went into this draft assuming that the top end targets were going to be centers. So they obviously wanted to make sure that they got out of that first round with the guy that they wanted to get.
Yes.
And that was clearly Nesbitt, probably because he's big. He's pretty big. Um, but he also seems to apparently have like a high end skill set that's held back by the bad skating.
Right.
And if they can fix the skating, if that gamble pays off for them, we could have a pretty solid 2C on our hands. That's good. The problem is we still don't have a 1C.
Yep.
A lot of people, Charlie O'Connor included, seem to think that James Hagens was a surefire 1C. I think if he was a surefire 1C, like would he have fallen like as far as he did?
Exactly.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like why
Yeah.
wouldn't somebody else have taken him
Yeah.
before he got to 6? Like that's kind of like my thinking on Hagens. Like I wouldn't have been mad if they took him.
Right.
But I am starting to doubt just how much of a sure thing 1C he is, given that, you know, a bunch of other teams passed on him as well.
Right.
So I think it's definitely a gamble. It definitely kind of, I think, put a little bit of a damper on the Flyers' first round draft for fans, particularly. But I don't know. At this point, I still trust Danny Briere in this front office because
Same here.
I still have no reason not to. So if this kid's a total bust, well, then we know that they made a bad pick. But until he is, I'm going to believe that like they see something there and they think that they're going to be able to get it out of him. And if they do, then, you know, landing a really good 2C with the 12th overall pick in a relatively weak draft, not a bad thing at all.
I agree. Totally agree with you. I came away from this draft, and we're going to get into more of these Flyers picks. I came away just good vibes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I really did. I just came away from having good vibes and knowing that there is a plan of action in place. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen that plan of action in so long as fans.
Just
And I
such
felt
a
good.
clear plan. It's like it's just so clear.
Yeah.
Every move they make, you can like see it as an
Yes.
incremental movement forward in this ultimate plan. And yeah, it just feels really good to know that like finally
Yes.
this organization, will the plan work? Unclear. Not
Yes.
going to know for
Who
a little
knows?
while.
Right.
However, there is a very clear plan. And not only is there a plan, but it's like a plan that if you think it through to the end can work and it makes sense. And
Yes.
the moves that they're making are moves that will get us to that end. Hopefully it works, but
Feels
I
good
feel good
right
right
now.
now. Yeah,
Yes.
right now,
Yes.
knowing that the plan is in place and pretty much every single move that has been made has been a win.
Yeah.
it's hard to like it's hard to not have faith in what they're doing at
And
this
I
point.
think I think Flyers Nation as well. That's the vibes I'm getting from
Mhm.
the fan base. A fan base that is very segmented, a fan base that absolutely loves to be critical constantly of an
Sure do.
organization. And you really feel the majority of folks just kind of gelling together after this draft to say, okay, we're seeing some good things here. So
Yeah.
yeah, look, hey, we need to take a quick break here to pay some bills. And when we get back, we got more draft talk, got more Flyers talk, folks. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with our good friend from BroadStreetHockey.com, Kelly Hinkle. Search her out over on Blue Sky. She's also on the Twitter/X at Hinks. And
Yes.
again, BroadStreetHockey.com. Subscribe over there. They've got a lot of great content and a lot of great Flyers podcasts too. You got a Flyers podcast too over there too with our good friend Ryan Gilbert. And
Great.
yeah, doing good stuff. All right, keep talking about this draft here because I
Mhm.
thought that Danny Briere was kind of surgical when it came to the second round when they drafted defenseman. I'm going to mess his last name up because I constantly screw up names. Carter Amico. Did I say it right?
Amico. Yeah.
Amico.
Mhm.
Oh my God, I said it right.
Amico.
I can't
Yeah.
believe it. I thought it was. I thought it was a really shrewd trade. They traded down to get the number 38 overall pick in the second round, moving back just 2 spots. Then they turned their third round pick into a late second rounder, jumping 11
Yeah.
spots in the process, right? So this move essentially gave them back the second rounder that they
Mhm.
gave up to get Trevor Zegras. And I guess the conventional wisdom, Kelly, was that if Amico didn't have that injury, likely would have been a first round
Yep.
pick. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on the Amico pick, the first defenseman that they picked here in this 2025 draft?
I think it was a good one. Like you said, the move that he made to just move down a little bit to move up a lot later.
Yeah,
Again, just another one of those Danny Briere moves where you're like, okay, like
seems surgical.
he
Yes.
cooks a little bit. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah, yeah.
does stuff that's like unexpectedly sneaky and good.
Yep.
Um, so that was cool just in and of itself. But Amico seems to be kind of the logical successor to Rasmus Ristolainen. Like he's very big. He's got a mean streak. He's a defensive defenseman. He's not an offense guy.
Yep.
Um, and like you said, it was just that knee injury that kept him out for most of last season. And as a result, he just fell out of the first round. Um, it's an interesting pick to me because, again, there seems to be a very clear agenda that would suggest that when this team is competitive, so if this is a cup contending team in like 3 years, um, I think there'll be a playoff team before that, but like if we're talking like real cup contention, probably
Yeah.
like three,
Yeah.
if all things go well. Um, you would hope that most of these kids are going to be ready by then, um, particularly because, again, they drafted big boys. And so all of them are kind of physically ready
Yeah.
already for the NHL. They're all big enough.
Yep.
So it's just a matter of developing the skill and, getting up to NHL speed and all that kind of stuff. Um, it seems like they very clearly want to make sure that around the skill guys that they're getting, and they don't seem scared of small skill guys. Jet Lushenko, again, not very big. Michkov, he's thick, but he's not big.
Right.
Trevor Zegras, obviously, not big at all. Like they don't seem scared of the idea of having small skill guys, but also I think that like the rest of the league, they took a look at what the Florida Panthers do in the playoffs and they're like, okay, so when we're really ready to get there, we're going to need some dudes that are willing to, elbow the goalie in the head or take out somebody's knees or,
Right.
whatever the case may be. Like they obviously very clearly think that they need a little bit of big and a little bit of nasty kind of in like the mid range skill wise. And I think that Amico seems to fit that bill perfectly. Like he's not just big and mean, he's also got some skill. But
Yeah.
I do think that like they're looking down the line and Risto will probably not be here. Um, and then like you have Hunter McDonald, but like Is he actually good? Unclear. Like, he's
Yeah.
definitely big.
Right.
Is he actually good? I don't know. Amico seems more like a surefire bet to be a guy that can stick in, you know, your bottom pairing in the NHL and bring that kind of nastiness that it seems very clear that the league has just decided collectively that we need to be dirty as hell in the playoffs in order to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Um, Hard to argue with a team doing it twice in a row, but
Right.
you could also just like call penalties, but I guess we're
Yeah.
not going to do that.
Good. Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, it just seems, again, like we said, like there seems to be a plan. There seems to be like in place the idea of what this team needs to look like at the end of this. And I think that Amigo fits that bill of just like we need to be a little bit bigger and a little bit tougher when we get to the portion of this rebuild that involves us competing for a Stanley Cup.
Yeah. It was such an interesting draft in so many different ways. And
Hmm.
I'm also wondering too, like, and I know it's a general question, but I mean, are there any picks from this draft that you really liked? I mean, outside of the draft picks that we've already talked about thus far,
Hmm.
that you like really liked or maybe really disliked? I mean, another center they picked up in the second round was Matthew Guard. They
Hmm.
also ended up getting another center in the sixth round, Nathan Quinn. I mean, are there any guys that you liked, did not like in terms of the pick, where they were picked, or what are your thoughts here?
I don't know that there were any that I actively disliked. Um, I know at Broad Street Hockey there were a couple on day two that kind of had the folks that I consider experts in the draft kind of being like, I don't
Kind
know
of
about that
meh,
one.
kind of meh.
Um,
Yeah.
One that I think is universally seemed to be liked both by the folks at Broad Street Hockey and like Charlie. Shane Van Sage seemed
Okay.
to be a guy that people are pretty excited about. I know Charlie had him
Second round
as
winger, folks, just to
yeah,
let you
yeah,
know.
second,
Yep.
yeah, who plays I think for Michigan State.
I think
Yeah,
so.
Michigan State.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, I know Charlie had him as one of the guys that he was hoping the Flyers would be able to land, I think in the late first round when we were thinking they were going to be picking 22nd and 31st. Um, so he seems like he's a lot of fun as a player. So that'll be interesting. It's just, I kind of like, it's hard for me to get super excited about draft prospects
Yeah.
like the second after they're drafted. You know what I mean? Just because like i- it's like in the weeks leading up to it we can all pretend that we know what these kids are going to be.
Right.
We don't know what these kids are going to be. Like, the only way you really know is like, the Islanders know that in Matthew Schaefer they got a stud defenseman that they can build an entire defense
Yeah.
around. Like, they know that.
Well, this
It's
is the
hard to know.
sport. This is the
Right,
sport. It's the
exactly.
draft
you
process. Do you know what I mean?
you
It's like
don't
baseball.
know. Right.
Yeah.
It Some of these kids are going to be busts.
Yes.
Some of them
Yes.
are going to turn into something.
Yep.
I don't know what's what, but like I just know that like if you look at what the experts grading drafts, everyone gave the Flyers an A. A's, A minuses. I think the lowest I saw was a B plus. Um, so it seems pretty clear that the people who do this for a living, the people who watch tape on these
Yeah.
kids and really study this stuff, they think Danny Briere did a great job. So like, who am I to argue with them
Right.
at this stage of the game? If in 3 years Shane Van Sage can't crack an NHL lineup, then like maybe I could be like, well, that was kind of a bad pick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But like right now seems good.
It does. Right now, it does
This
seem
is
very
Yeah,
good.
this is one of those times. I know that you and I talk about this a lot. This is one of those times where as a fan, you can choose to be optimistic and happy
Right.
about what happened, or you can choose to be negative and pessimistic and think that they did a bad job. Because both of those outcomes are equally likely as we sit here today. So like it's your choice.
Yes.
If you want to be excited about what just happened, you can be, or you can, be a bummer about it because they didn't get James Hagan. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's a perfect segue into the next topic, as we're reflecting here on the draft too, because, I think the biggest theme, and whether I was asking Madeline Campbell from Broad Street Hockey, who
Hmm.
came on, talking to Charlie as well, recently, getting his thoughts too about, what we wanted the theme to be from this Flyers draft. And I think the biggest theme coming out of this draft is that Danny Briere in the front office, they wanted their prospects to be a lot bigger, which is what
Yep.
we've been talking about as well. So many of these draft prospects are well over 6 feet too at this point here. I mean, and who knows? Maybe some of these kids will still continue to grow. We don't know. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this draft was a defining moment for Danny Briere, and I think we also have to realize that as well. Like you were just saying, some of these picks are going to come to fruition in various ways. Some may flop, some may be better than we expected on draft night itself, but the vibes that you're talking about, and just, I guess, to talk about it one more time before we get to Trevor Zegras, because I wanted to talk about him, get your thoughts there. But I mean, I guess, what are the vibes that you now have after this draft? You know, what this moment actually means for this Flyers organization overall. I mean, pretty positive from what you're saying here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard for me to look at what has happened over the past season and not be excited about the future of this team. Just
Yeah.
because while every single move might not have been the move that I would make if I were GM of the Flyers, I don't look at a single one of them as objectively bad. Like, there has not yet been a bad move made by Danny Briere, be it like a trade where they're just getting rid of guys like Farabee and Frost,
Yep.
trade where they're bringing in a guy like you get Trevor Zegras for essentially Ryan Paling, and that's it. This draft again, like, I think that the Flyers should at this point always be prioritizing high end talent. They obviously were prioritizing size, but also with talent. Like, I don't think they took anybody in the Brady Martin vein, which is to say a guy that is questionable on the talent side of things, but definitely big and mean.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't do any of that. Like, they took guys that they think are going to be good hockey players that are also big. And that kind of prioritization, I think, is important because in the past, I think the Flyers had a tendency to just go big. Like, I
Yeah.
always think back to the Sam Moran pick.
Sam Warren. Yep. Yep.
Like, that pick was insane,
Yep.
start to finish. The only reason they took him is because he was really, really big.
And we saw what he did in the AHL at the Phantoms. You know, we
Yeah,
saw what he did
listen,
when they brought him up to, and just the lack of being able to really develop.
right.
We saw it.
And he had, a lot of injuries that, of course,
Yes.
hampered him a lot. Nothing you
Yep.
can do about that. But um, at the end of the day, when they made that pick on draft day, they were making it simply because he was large.
Yeah.
And that's not really a good reason to draft anybody. But in this draft, the Flyers seem to be prioritizing a combination of talent and size. And I think that's good. And you really can't, I mean, you really can't succeed in the NHL if you're just small guys.
Yeah.
And the Flyers have been, like I said, they don't seem to be scared of small, talented guys. And they've been going out and getting some of these small, talented guys. So, yeah, eventually you are going to have to fill in with some big dudes. And they seem to take the approach that, like, okay, rather than going out and finding like a big fourth liner in free agency in 2 years that we can use to plug a hole, maybe we draft and develop some big
Yeah.
guys that might also have some upside on skill. And I think that that's a fine gamble to take.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the theme for the team very, very clearly was big.
Yep.
Every kid they took pretty much was big. I think they only took one guy that was under 6 feet tall.
Yep.
But like I said, I don't look at any of those picks and see just big, which I think for a fan like me that wants to see like the exciting high end skill that the Flyers have been lacking for so long. Not a lot of these kids are going to bring high end skill, but like you're not going to get a lot of high end skill in the second round unless you get super lucky.
Right.
Flyers took a bunch of kids in the second and third rounds that are big and might be good.
Yeah.
Good
And
enough
I'll
for me.
take it.
Like I'll take it. Yeah. Yeah.
Good vibes
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly.
So, Kelly, before I let you go, we'll end our discussion by, diving into the Trevor Zegras pick, which, we still haven't been able to talk about on this podcast show because of our schedules and vacations and things like that. But Danny Briere, I mean, he also, took a big swing on Zegras, acquiring him right before the draft. And it was kind of nice to see Flyers Nation, again, kind of like after this draft, basically at a consensus with this
Yeah.
trade to say, you know what, this is a damn good move. This is a really good move for the future of the team. I mean, for the most part, everybody has basically loved it from what I've been reading. I mean, of course, you have a few negative Nellies here and there. What did this move mean for the Flyers organization as we're now looking to see, how these pieces of the rebuild are really trying to take shape like a puzzle here? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it was kind of like the textbook move that I wanted to see from this front office, because they do need top line talent
Yeah.
without question, specifically a 1C. Um, and it's really hard to get those guys. Like, those guys don't really get traded. Like, no one's trading you Nathan McKinnon.
Right.
No one's trading you Connor McDavid.
Right.
Like, you're not going to get the sure thing guys in a trade. You can probably get one at the tail end of his career in free agency. That's one option. Or you take a risk on a reclamation project, which is exactly what Trevor Zegras is. The high end talent is unquestionably there. Like, we saw it for two, it wasn't just like a one season aberration. We saw it 2 seasons from him
Yep.
when he was very young, that he can be a very, very good center in this league. The Ducks kind of fell apart as an organization. Their coach is apparently a nightmare, like towards times 10, just like a
Yeah.
terrible guy to play for.
Right.
They moved him to wing. I'm assuming because of his size, and he is not a winger. And I think that the Flyers clearly believe that he is a center. Like, everything that they've said since they've traded for him would seem to suggest to me that they think this guy is a center. At the very least, they're going to give him every opportunity to succeed at center. So this is the kind of move where not only are you able to get a guy that potentially could be the 1C that you're looking for, but you're able to get him for practically nothing because you were willing to be patient and kind of outweight the teams that you're dealing with, which Briere has done before. He did it with Scott Lawton.
Yes.
He got more for Scott Lawton than I think the Bruins got for Brad Marchand.
Yeah. That's
Like,
crazy. Yes.
simply because he was like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
If you want to give me a first overall pick, or if you want to give me a first round pick, you can have him, but otherwise, no.
Right.
Other GMs might have been like, all right, I'll take the second. Briere was like, nah, I'm going to wait. And he ended up getting what he wanted. These Zegras rumors have been around for at least like a year, right? We've been hearing about the possibility of Zegras coming to the Flyers. And clearly, Briere was waiting and waiting and waiting for the moment at which he could get him for Ryan Poehling.
Yes.
So, like, listen, no shade to Ryan Poehling. I really liked him as a player. He was a very effective and fun fourth line center, but very clearly a fourth line center. Like, not anything more than that.
Right.
And you traded him and a couple of late picks, which, as you said, you ended up getting back one of them.
Yeah.
For a guy that could potentially, and probably more than like a 50% shot at him becoming your 1C for the next 10 years, because he's only like 24. You know what I mean? Like, everything about this move is good. And like you said, I didn't see a single, and this is really hard to come by.
Yes.
I didn't see a single negative reaction to this trade on social media. Like, everybody was like, oh, okay. Like, yes, that's very good. I mean, everything about it is low risk. He's got 1 year left on his contract. If this is a disaster, then you let him go.
There you go.
If it's like only a little bit good, you could probably sign him for a pretty decent price and hope that he still turns into the guy that you want him to be. If it's really, really good and you have to pay him a lot of money, good problem to have, in my opinion. So there's just a lot to like about that deal. I would love to meet someone that didn't like it. I would just like to hear the reasoning behind not liking it. But like you said, it was one of those rare moments when every single Flyers fan was like, hell yes, this is awesome. Let's go. And
it shows what Danny Briere has been able to do thus far as the GM of this team and organization. It really is amazing. Good vibes all the way around here.
Top to
And we,
bottom. Yes.
yes, absolutely. She is Kelly Hinkle, folks, and we are the PST Podcast Show. Follow us on social media. If you are on YouTube, you'll see our social media sites right in front of you. We are on Instagram, Twitter/X. I'm over on TikTok at Mr. Jeff Warren. We're also on Blue Sky. Search Eric and myself out there. The show is on Threads. You can like our Facebook page as well. And Kelly, again, broadstreethockey.com, and let everybody know where they can find you on the social sites out there.
Yeah, so I'm Hanks on Blue Sky and Hanks on Twitter. It's pretty much the only places that I am. Blue
Yeah.
Sky more than Twitter at this point.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, also, come hang out at broadstreethockey.com. Our people are putting out the amount of stuff that they put out on this draft is just incredible to
It was
me.
great. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, if you subscribe to the website, every single dollar that you pay goes directly to the people that are making the content. So I think that's pretty cool because it's not the case with most websites that you're visiting. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so if you want to come by, hang out with us, that would be awesome.
Always a great time talking with you, Kelly. Come back and join us down the road. I'd love to talk more Flyers with you in the future.
Anytime.
Folks, like and subscribe to the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show if you're watching on YouTube. And we got more great content coming to you this week and every week. We will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.